Dear friends and partners, it's indeed a great pleasure to welcome you today to the second edition of the Austrian-Swedish Innovation Exchange Day.
I think we can start right into the program, Antonia, right?
Yes, exactly. So we start by listening to 9 pitches of young entrepreneurs presenting the digital solutions.
After these startup presentations, we are happy to announce 4 top presentations from some of the leading companies in the 3 focused areas. So while the corporates and startups meet in the virtual rooms, we will have 2 presentations on the main stage here. So stay with us, because we will hear interesting insights on the topics of funding and internationalization.
What we do actually is that we bring you through our network to the right person that you can speak to.
Eurostars is a program which is funded by the European Commission. We have close to 40 partners involved.
So then we will finalize with an example of Austrian-Swedish collaboration in the cluster projects.
Thanks a lot to Johanna Scheck and Peter Lindberg for this presentation.
So let's go to the first panel discussion. How to use digital innovations for sustaining the business during and after the pandemic.
I think that the crisis has made us aware how important it is to implement new digital business models and new technologies. When it comes to digitalization, the startups normally are quite good in digitalization. Also, the bigger companies are quite good, but the huge amount of SMEs often need to catch up. And in Austria, 99% of our companies are SMEs. And this is why we support SMEs by consulting and by investment incentives in the area of digitalization, and we already helped around 20,000 SMEs in Austria.
In trying to establish collaborations, establishing exchanges between individuals, between organizations, between research projects, is the difficulty in going across the various dimensions in differences in culture and differences in tradition. It's perfectly fine to go virtual if you are interfacing with people who are in a different location, but maybe dealing with similar things that you have been working with to establish new contacts that way. Once those collaborations are established, I think we're going into an online paradigm entirely in the research domain. And that also carries across to things like education and all of the projects that we are interfacing with new communities over here as well. So it has fundamentally changed the way that we're operating many of the things that we are doing. But as I said, it's a complementary approach. And we'll see where we end up with the hybrid meetings in the future as well. This is an example of such a meeting where we are trying to reach across different domains and reaching perhaps new constellations and new people as well.
When you look in the past, then we had communication systems like 2G, 3G, and 4G, which was basically helping us to establish communication between humans, or a human and a web server or a video server. But now in this digital transformation, it became clear that it's very important also that machines communicate with each other directly with sensors or for remote control tasks. And here, the current upcoming 5G technology, which is being rolled out, is a very important driver and provider for such functionalities.
Another important thing also from a government perspective is that it's important not to leave anyone behind when it comes to digitalization. It's important or true for companies and their employees, but also for elderly people, for example. They must be aware of the opportunities, but also of the risks when it comes to the digital transformation.
The main problem we face is really the motivation issue mentioned before, that we are a people business, and therefore we need this motivation and the momentum, which can only happen if people really meet and create some cooperation.
our mission is really to strive for innovation that makes a difference. And looking now for the future, the green transition is as important as the digital transformation. And the European Union really highlights that in their Green Deal, speaking about twin transition. And for Vinnova, we have had a number of different focus areas and calls focusing on sustainability in different ways. But we really see the need for having a long-term broad program focusing on this, how to do it hand in hand.
There has been a stronger focus on that's partly due to the pandemic, but I think it's also partly due to the general trends in society today that we are moving much more towards automated systems and intelligent devices. Machine learning is, as we all know, exploding in the research domain in the world, and AI has been the buzzword for such a long time. And I think it's also powering some of these technologies that are enabling the digital transformation for us. In the wake of the pandemic, we are moving much more towards those services.
We are facing common challenges, but also opportunities, as we clearly can see. And the question about cooperation between industry and authorities, well, it takes two to tango, doesn't it? Well, there is one element which is fundamental in order to be successful in the digital era, and it is the skilling side. There is currently a big shortage of people trained in the field of digital skill in all various aspects of the digital knowledge. Studies have made clear that we lack about 70,000 positions where digital skilling will be needed on the Swedish market alone. Now, eventually, potentially, there could be an inflow coming from Ukraine, given the sad situation we have in Ukraine, but clearly there are capacities that could be utilized from a different perspective.
The two topics we have been focusing on for the last 2 years now will be a midterm goal, which means it was mentioned before that we achieve to keep the students who passed the Austrian university, who just finished the Austrian university, to keep them in these industrial regions, and they don't move out, and maybe on the other hand also attract some other people from outside.
And now we're looking already to the 6G domain. So 5G is now coming to the market. It delivers new functions, new functionalities, new use cases. It's very important. And now we look into the next 10 years of technology that will support the needs in this long time frame, with national research projects, but also with activities in the Horizon Europe context.
The so-called twin transition seems to play an important role in both research and practical implementations of innovations. That's what I want to discuss with a distinguished panel now. The key question is, how can we speed up economic recovery and ensure sustainable growth across multiple industries?
It's important for us now to focus on the medium and long-term challenges now that we are to recover after the COVID pandemic. On the other hand, we already mentioned that the world is once again unstable and even frightening, and the future is certainly uncertain. But I'm sure that digitalization and the green transformation are absolute in the center if we want to recover in a good way, and if we want to face the challenges, the environmental challenges, be part of solving them, at the same time creating economies that are successful and competitive. And of course, if we can be successful in understanding that and taking all those opportunities, taking care of all those opportunities, we will be successful economies and at the same time be part of solving challenges, important and difficult challenges.
We approached the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth in the year 2018 to learn from this pioneering agency and country as part of an EU-funded project. Talking about this twin situation between green and digital, we here in Austria, the federal government is the financing is focused on actively on investing in green technologies and renewable energy. The most important topics currently include, besides energy, mobility transition and circular economy. And we have established new programs, just to mention a few, that is zero emission public transport, buses and infrastructure. This is more an infrastructure topic with a total budget of 250 million euro in the framework of the New Generation EU. And we also have new lines of intervention in the area of new materials for construction, but also, of course, with rethinking our cities with positive energy districts or a green frontrunner that is to help Austrian or other companies to invest in Austria and settle in Austria.
One thing for sure is that 5G and mobile networks will be part of the digital and economic conversations. It is pretty clear that our national economies worldwide, as well as the enterprises, will not move forward from a perspective to returning to the pre-pandemic status quo. The things have changed, as I said. Instead, the way forward will be built on the digital infrastructure, innovations and inclusion. Strong digital infrastructure needs to be in place to become a basis for the fast enablement. Innovation frameworks need to be in place in order to allow multi-stakeholder governance. And then there should be also a clear agenda to ensure fair and equal access to the new opportunities that are unlocked by digitalization. Europe has a set of unique expertises across different segments. We can talk about tourism, automotive, agriculture. But what is important is that bringing digitalization to those industries could help really to put Europe into the 5G frontline.
Digital tools are not just an enabler. I would even say they are in many ways also a driver already. We are in an environment where we have to combine the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. Yeah. And if you want to combine these 3 elements, digitization is playing a central role. Digitization is really a driver to achieve our goals in the sustainability environment. So it's more than just a tool, and it's more just an enabler. And if we break it down to the business perspective, it's also clear, and there are also studies that show that digital leaders in the business environment have the growth, the revenue growth is twice as high as digital laggards.
So I believe that if we can provide support for the SMEs while cooperating, of course, between agencies, between countries and sectors, to make all the support available and accessible for SMEs, I think we can play an important role and be part of the transformation, and also be part of our SMEs becoming successful and competitive in the future. I also want to mention again the importance of the collection of data, but also to analyzing that data and creating more and more advanced algorithm. I think that will be very important in the future for us to understand what's happening. And we talk more and more about not just AI as artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence. And I think that's very important, because it's with the help of AI that we would be wiser and be able to make more intelligent decisions in the future.
It is of utmost importance to make funding available quickly, so that companies can retain their qualified employees and create additional jobs over the short term. During the last 2 years, we had like 40% more project proposals every month for 2 years, and that is really extremely high figures, because usually we are dealing with a few thousand per year, so that was really increasing. And that was a sign that many companies just used this time in this crisis to really improve their products, to improve their processes, also in investing into digitalization. and it makes them stronger. And we know with all figures that it makes you extremely strong and resilient after crisis if you invest into R&D and innovation during a crisis. So I think cooperation is important, extremely important, because we need to remain competitive and strengthen the European sovereignty in critical industries. And I think this is true for us in Austria as for Sweden and all the other European countries. And we've seen it during the COVID crisis with production of medicine and many other measures and tools we needed. This is probably the core of everything. If we can't help with the supply chains, and if we can't help our companies to do this transition, it's not worth it. Austria as well as Sweden, we are both countries and we are strong partners in the relation to the EU missions. And I think all of this together with the companies, and the companies are our clients, are our partners in the same at the same time. We need their inputs as well to see where we really have to focus on. And I think all this together, this whole ecosystem, if we really work together well, then we will probably make it for the future.
I think the challenges are becoming more and more complex. And when they're more complex, you need to cooperate. You don't know everything yourself. You need colleagues in other countries. You need other agencies. Henrietta mentioned Vinnova in Sweden. And of course, we cooperate with them on a daily basis. The more and the better cooperation we develop and make it a natural way of working together, I think we will be able to meet these challenges and that way also support our SMEs in a much better way. I would just like to continue working together, continue sharing and learning from each other, and that way reaching out and make our knowledge and our programs accessible to SMEs.
I think we can tackle all these challenges together in an ecosystem. The challenge in the area how to keep pace with the digitization, but also the challenge of cybersecurity. As an example, I mentioned that we have a clear trend with increasing attacks. We are part with our Security Operations Center, part of 600 other governmental institutions and security operations centers, and we share our experience. And we can only handle and tackle this challenge by sharing and collaborating across, as Gunilla also mentioned, academia, government, and other businesses.
We hope you had successful networking sessions. We now would like to call out the three leaders of these record sessions to tell us a bit what was going on in the groups.
Our conclusion was that, first of all, it is important that all the players acknowledge and understand the demand that is coming from the industry. It is important to know the pain points of your partner. It is important to understand what exactly these pain points are about. It is important to really put yourself into the shoes of the industry or a partner with whom you're talking about the 5G or digitalization in general. And then once you are there, it's becoming much more possible to talk how digitalization can help to solve the issue.
We need to think broader than just sustainability meant merely around products and services. We had in corporates wider broad, extending this to financial part, including the digitalization, the people, gender diversity, inclusion, ethics, product and services, safety and well-being, and the environmental impacts as well. And we all concluded, independent of the size of the corporate, it's still interesting for the resources. We have dedicated resources who can spend the time on it, who can also train the whole employees, because it has to be represented in the whole company who are in contact with all the stakeholders. And then if the resource is a bit limited, certain time because of other business priorities as well, how we can define the right priorities for sustainability.
We challenge ourselves a little bit and played with the thought that what if there were no physical face-to-face meetings ever again going forward? What would that require in a somewhat digital interface in order for that to happen? And to further spice it up, we played with the thought that what would it require for you to, let's say, settle a mega deal by only meeting the counterpart or the customer through a digital interface from day one. Important attributes through a face-to-face meeting, such as reading body language, facial expressions, the mood in general of the person you are talking with, are of absolute importance to also convey into such a solution.
Thanks to all the participants, thanks to all the panelists, thanks to the Swedish Embassy.
And of course the FFG.
For organizing this event.
And
I think that's it for today. Thank you and see you next year.